Hey guys, welcome to the Lean to the Left podcast. Today we're talking politics, and with me are Arthur Hill from North Carolina and Robert Thompson from Georgia. And I'm a Marylander transplanted into South Carolina, and together we're the Dixie Dams. Arthur's vice chair of the Brunswick County, North Carolina Democratic Party, and Robert is based in Atlanta, and he founded Peach News Now and its opinion podcast, Goddamn Liberals. And that's GOT, damn liberals. Me, I live in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and spend my time hosting this podcast and producing the Lean to the Left blog site. Now, there's a lot to talk about today. What with the Trump hush money trial nearing a conclusion, a new nationwide initiative to attract young voters and reduce political divisiveness in our country, a Supreme Court gerrymandering decision for South Carolina, worms discovered in RFK's brain, prosecutor Fannie T. Willis winning her primary election, more nastiness involving Georgia Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, Nikki Haley saying she'll vote for Trump even though she ran against him, and much more. So first, let's talk about the New York hush money trial, during which Trump has been having trouble staying awake and reportedly also has had trouble refraining from passing gas. Now, Trump said he didn't testify because he disagreed with Judge Merchan's ruling. What do you guys expect to happen? Will Trump be found guilty of falsifying financial records regarding a payoff to keep Stormy Daniels quiet?
My take on this, I think that one of two things. Let's say that he's guilty. All Trump's going to do is appeal and say that it's still some political witch hunt, or he gets off. And all it takes is one juror, because it has to be unanimous, right? This is a criminal trial, if I'm not mistaken, right?
That's right. But they got to vote on each count, and there's a bunch of counts. So
30 some.
Yeah, so it's pretty tough to imagine him not being guilty of something.
I guess there's also, as you talked about it there, a possible third path. Let's say that a juror lied on their questionnaire, and now maybe the jury is somewhat loaded against or for Trump. I don't know.
Then whichever parties aggrieved would have to ask for a mistrial.
Yeah.
And they'd go forward from there. And of course, that would be more time consumed and be a great victory for Trump, no matter what happened on that.
I think it's just a damn shame that this is the case that they went forward with first, and the other cases are getting delayed until after the election.
Yeah.
I just think that sucks. But it's typical Trump. He always manages to skate somehow. And it looks like that's what's going to happen here.
I cling to the hope that even if he's guilty of one of those counts, that he will be a convicted felon, and there'll be a lot of people in this country, including a lot of Republicans, that will say, I can't vote for a felon for president of the United States. There's been some state polls that have been run that have there's a 7-point differential. If Trump's guilty, he loses 7 points in the poll. And I think that that's likely in a lot of areas. And on your passing gas comment, I would argue that he's been passing gas for 75 years.
Certainly a lot of hot air, that's for sure.
Yeah. Lots of
there's been some doom and gloom news, as I'll call it, somewhat recently. Polls allegedly are close and things like this. And we all remember that we assumed Hillary was going to win. I'm going to preface this with, this cannot make us complacent. This is coming from the guy that goes to the bank once or twice a week and swaps out $20 bills with Biden and Harris on them. But we can't be complacent. But the other side of this, show me someone who is suddenly now a Trump voter. I just don't see the Republican Party adding people to look at their whole evangelical base. churches. The membership in churches continues to decline.
Mhm.
And part of this is to blame, is because of the hypocrisy.
Mhm.
I hope, and I preface this that we can't assume, but I hope that this is just yet another nail in their coffin. But again, there was, if you look at the vote in Georgia this week, there was the Supreme Court of Georgia case this week. And you had abortion in no uncertain terms on the ballot. And it was a 55-45 vote for the conservative justice in that particular race. There could be several different, reasons why that happened, but that's a scary thing when that same issue in other races has been spun a different way and had a different outcome, right?
Yeah, I think it's difficult for me to imagine the problems that pollsters have these days in getting accurate information from the people who they interview. It's so much easier for people to avoid polls altogether. The methods that they're using are still fairly antiquated in terms of how they find people who are willing to participate in the polls. I think there's a really good chance that the pollsters, at least some of them, could be wrong again, and we'll see who that affects the most. They can't seem to come to a decision on the effect of RFK Jr.'s entry in the race. They can't seem to figure out who gets hurt by that or who's helped by that. And I just think that's indicative of a certain amount of uncertainty in the polls. But I agree with Robert that I think everybody's fairly well frozen into their position now. And that there's certainly a very small minority of voters out there who are still undecided. I can't believe there's any, but at least among folks who are likely to vote, that there are very many undecided votes.
Yeah. It's just hard to believe that with all this going on, that he's still pulling big crowds when he goes and does these rallies. Unbelievable that people are still buying into his crap.
You also have to remember that some of those people are paid to be there.
Yeah, and even then, the crowds have been going down. There's not nearly as many folks showing up for his rallies as have in the past.
Yeah.
And people are tired of Trump. I think Republicans are tired of Trump. If you were to really ask Nikki Haley off the record, can't you imagine that Nikki Haley is tired of Trump? And just give it up, man. And it goes back to, I even had a similar conversation at my day job this week with a coworker. I wasn't raised like this. I was not the type of person that when I failed at something, I just kept bitching about it 20 times over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
I don't operate like that.
Right.
And I have a family that raised me that is pretty conservative, and yet they want to get behind a guy that just gets on TV and whines all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't get it, but whatever.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a Trump fatigue in the country right now.
Well, I think there's fatigue too of all this nastiness and divisiveness that has been going on, and he can be blamed for a lot of it. But I think a lot of people are getting sick and tired of that too. Don't you think?
Yeah, and it's working on the down ballot side too. The guy in North Carolina who's the Republican candidate for governor, Mark Robinson, has endorsed a claim that the theory of evolution is demonic. That's his quote of the week.
Wow.
And I think most people don't think that. And I think they'll disregard it, as they have, I hope, most of everything that he says. But that's indicative of a certain kind of fatigue up and down the ballot.
Yeah. Okay. In the intro, I mentioned this nationwide initiative to bring America together and energize young voters. It's called Together with an exclamation point. And it was launched by a guy named Jason Palmer and two sidekicks of his, Kwame Jackson and Deborah Perry Piccioni. Palmer had challenged Biden early in the primary. He pulled out, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, and realizing that there was no way he was going to get the nomination, but decided that what he wanted to do was create this organization that would attract young voters and also try to reduce all this rancor and hate and whatnot that's been going on in this country. He says that Together is crafted to steer America away from polarization and extremes by mobilizing young American voters to elect a new generation of common sense leaders from all political backgrounds. And they're endorsing and working on behalf of candidates who fit their purple mold, who believe in bipartisanship, and they hope to register at least 1 million young voters by this fall. That's a pretty ambitious undertaking. And you guys, if you're interested in learning more about this, you can check out the episode that's now streaming on the Lean to the Left podcast that is with Palmer and his two sidekicks. Now, lots of people are upset because their choices this November are two octogenarians, Trump and Biden, plus RFK Jr., who seems a bit crazy and recently announced that he's suffering from worms in his brain. Now, if America can elect a felon, can they also elect somebody that's got worms in his brain? Just a question.
He's only got one worm in his brain.
There's only one?
Yeah, there's only
Oh,
one.
that's heartening.
And he's dead. That worm.
Oh, it's dead?
Yeah, that's one dead worm.
Oh, well, what's to worry about then?
And somebody told me, I think it was one of my sons told me that somebody did an X-ray of RFK Jr.'s head and they found the worm and he had on a little teeny red hat.
What did the hat say on the front?
He couldn't read it. He couldn't read it.
Oh, shit. Oh, man.
You certainly can't make it up. But on the other hand, why in the world did you tell anybody that?
I know.
Yeah, why did he come out with that? He didn't have to.
What was the strategy in even disclosing that info?
Yeah,
that's a good question. I wondered that immediately. Why did he feel he had to tell people this?
He even had plausible deniability. He could have said the worm ate that synapse that had that bit of knowledge in it, and I didn't know. Could have said that if he got caught.
What kind of worm is it? Was it like a fishing worm or what kind of?
Or a maggot worm?
Yeah,
a maggot worm. Maggot worm.
and
I wonder if it's the kind. When I was a kid, my grandfather and I used to go out in the backyard of his house and after rain and collect night crawlers for fishing, and they're big. I wonder if that's the kind of worm he had, or if he had some other kind of worm that's smaller and creepier and with teeth.
Man.
I don't know. All right, here in South Carolina, on a more serious note, the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, has just upheld a Republican redistricting map that a lower court already said discriminates against blacks. But the Supreme Court, in a 6-3 ruling with the conservative majority in charge, they reversed that lower court ruling and said that black voters will still have a chance to continue their case by using a different argument. But nevertheless, they ruled that even though the lower court said that in this district, which was won by the Republican Nancy Mace by a very narrow margin 2 years ago, that it's...
And Nancy Mace has since turned very much to MAGA.
Yeah, she's turned MAGA. And I did a podcast interview with a couple of Democrats who were running for the nomination for that seat. And those episodes, there's two of them. They're online too, if anybody cares to take a look at podcast.leantoleft.net. But it's just typical, to me, it's just typical of what's going on with the courts in this country that have been stacked by Trump. And he's benefiting from that in these cases that are stemming from the insurrection. Big time with that judge in Florida.
You've also got the Alito flag thing, which he ought to recuse himself from the January 6th cases just based on that, but he's not gonna.
Explain what you're talking about. You're talking about his wife had put a American flag upside down outside their house.
That's what he said.
Yeah.
He threw his wife under the bus.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
and blamed it on her. And then today, in the New York Times for what is today, May the 24th, he has a vacation home in South New Jersey, and he had another flag up there, which is indicative of has some conservative religious evangelical notion. And he hasn't said anything about who put that flag up. So clearly he's got a bias here. If we didn't know before, we certainly know it now. And why he can't recuse himself from these trials is going to be a bit of a scandal, I think.
Yeah.
It's like watching a Scooby-Doo, and they get to the part where they unmask the villain or the ghost, and they rip the mask off. Were we really surprised?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have another case here in South Carolina where the LGBTQ folks have been fighting for a hate crime law. South Carolina is one of, I think, only a couple of states in this country that does not have such a law. And it passed the House, but died in the Senate, and the legislature adjourned here the other day without passing that. And another one that they failed to deal with would have established a medical marijuana program in South Carolina. So here we are again with just these crazy Republicans, and it's just wrong. The fact that there's no hate crime law in South Carolina is just horrible, in my opinion.
Yep.
And you guys heard that little noise. That was my dog shaking his head. So I'm sorry if it bothered you. But he's sitting back here behind me. So anyway, Arthur, what's going on in your state?
Robert was talking about masks a little while, just a second ago. We have a mask controversy going on in North Carolina. The legislature is going through its so-called short session right now, and they're in conference on a bill that amends the anti-mask law in North Carolina. The current law says that the current law dates back to the 50s, and it says that wearing masks when it's to take part in a demonstration or some sort of a protest or something like that is illegal. And the reason for they were trying to stop the Ku Klux Klan from demonstrating with their hoods on. And that was the purpose of the law. Then in 2020, they amended the law to give an exemption to people who wear masks for health reasons, because COVID was coming and they wanted to make sure that the people didn't get arrested for trying to avoid COVID by wearing a mask. Now, for some reason, the new bill gets rid of that exemption. All of a sudden, they're going to go back to the way the law was written in the 50s. And if you're sitting in a park and your autoimmune system is screwed up and you need to wear a mask, you could get arrested by local police. And so there's a big controversy about that. Democrats are raising hell, and the Republicans are probably going to go forward with the new bill that deletes that exemption, and it'll go to the governor and he'll veto it. And then because the legislature is a supermajority, they'll override the veto, so it'll become a law. Don't wear a mask if you're in North Carolina, particularly if you're demonstrating or anything of that nature. So there's that going on.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Absolutely crazy. It is. And all the Republican legislators say there's not a sheriff or a local police chief or local police force in the state that's going to arrest you for wearing a mask for health reasons. And to that, the Democrats say, how do you know? If the exemption's not there, what's to stop them?
Right.
No, that's not going to happen. Yeah, it's caused a lot. They left the law just like it is. It wouldn't have made any difference. They brought on this needless controversy on their own. So there's that going on. The other thing that's going on is DEI has become a big issue in the state. They're trying to, it's in the same bracket as anti-racial bias legislation was a couple of years ago. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to eliminate funding primarily in the state colleges. So the Board of Chancellors, or whatever they're called, at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, has voted to reallocate $3 million for their DEI offices to go to public safety offices on campus. And
what's DEI stand for?
Diversity, equality, and inclusion.
Oh, okay.
And what they've done is they've actually set up offices, and they give out grants for programs that'll promote DEI, and they have scholarships that they give out. And It's a good program, and Republicans and conservatives are trying to get rid of that for the same reason they tried to get rid of other so-called woke programs that have come to pass in the last few years. So they're up to no good in the General Assembly, and the only thing we can hope for is that the short session is really going to be short, and they really are going to go home in June. So
yeah, the whole DEI thing, there's another angle to this. And even Fani Willis, she was on Rachel Maddow, I believe it was Monday evening, if you didn't get a chance to see her. And here in Georgia, when Fani Willis was the only one that took it on her back to go against the former president, she made a point the other evening that when you look at the district attorneys here in Georgia, and we have 159 counties, some of those counties don't have quite that many people living in them, so they combine into some of these court districts. That's why you have the district attorney, because it's not necessarily one per county. But she, and I believe it, that the district attorneys here in Georgia that are of minorities, like herself, Cobb County, that now has, even Flynn Brody lost, but he's being replaced by a black woman up in Cobb County. If you take the proportion of the population here in Georgia, and of course the people that live in these court districts elect these district attorneys. But if you take the total population, the people in those counties and those areas, they actually elect a diverse level of folks. People like Fani Willis, like over here in DeKalb, you also have another black woman over here. The angle that I'm getting at is that if you don't like seeing old white men running everything, or maybe you do because you're trying to get rid of DEI. Yeah, but maybe that's reading in between the lines there, right?
Yeah. If you have the kind of electorate that has a representative population that can recruit and run candidates like that, that's great. But there's a lot of counties, including the one that I'm in, that it's changing. It's evolving. It's changing. But up to now, it's been pretty much old white men running the show. We're trying to change that. And we're hoping that other people will too when they go to vote. But you've got a nice situation down there in DeKalb County and Atlanta and so on, that you've got a diverse population and you can help with that. We had a black woman who ran for the U.S. Senate last time, Sherry Beasley. She lost by just a couple thousand votes to Ted Budd, who was a white guy who owns a gun store in Western North Carolina. And we tried to get out the vote, tried to get out more candidates who would likely vote for her, women, blacks, and we were able to only be so successful. And she just lost by the slimmest of majorities. It was unfortunate. She would have been the first black woman senator from North Carolina, and I think maybe is that right? Would she have been the first black woman senator in the Senate?
I think so.
Yeah, I think so too. I can't think of anybody else.
Yeah.
It would have been
right next door. You have our Senator Warnock. That was clearly an electoral decision and totally against Trump. That now we have two Democratic senators in Georgia elected to their full terms.
Yeah, that's terrific, and I think that's going to help keep Georgia at least purple in November.
Oh yeah, I was even talking to someone, I think it was a coworker the other day. I said, nobody's from Atlanta. I can count on two hands the people I know that are native Metro Atlanta people. And also we're full. It's hard to find a place to live here because everybody's coming to Atlanta. But that has changed the demographics. You have people coming from north of the Mason-Dixon line, maybe from out west, they've come here, and it changes the demographic clearly. And the Republicans, like our governor, Kemp, he knows it. And he tries to put Trump and the crazy people for the 40-foot, even our lieutenant governor as well. He said, you Republicans are crazy, even though I got elected as a Republican.
Yeah.
So that they see it. They see the writing on the wall, and the chaos is only going to continue to hamper them.
Yeah. Same thing's true in North Carolina. There's 10 million people in the state now, and I think it's the 10th largest state in the country, population-wise. And Brunswick County, where I am, is one of the fastest growing counties in the state. And we got to the point now where we're running out of room. There's literally so much development going on, and there's not a whole lot of control over it. And we've got Democrats running on our ballot that are running on a controlling development platform. Not stopping it, just controlling it. And that's getting to be a problem. Plus, affordable housing is another issue. people who have low-level incomes are going to very quickly get to the point where they can't afford to live here anymore.
Same thing's going on down here in South Carolina, in Horry County, which is home to Myrtle Beach and some of the other seaside resorts.
Mhm.
Same thing's going on, uncontrolled development. And I saw in the press, I think yesterday, that there's a move by some local officials to try to curtail some of this development, but I don't see anything really happening on that. I really don't. You just all you have to do is look and see the construction that's taken place. Every place you look, it's either they've just raised the woods, the trees, just knocked them all down, and you drive by and you go, what the hell's going in now?
Mhm.
And it's going to be townhouses, it's going to be apartments, it's going to be single family homes. But many of the areas you look and you can see where they've built 4 or 5 story concrete pillars, which are going to house elevators. And so that's going to be an apartment building.
Mhm.
And now the question is that a good thing because of the need for affordable housing? Is that a good thing? I'm not sure. But the fact of the matter is that there seems to be no consideration given to the need to preserve open space, to preserve green space, and so on. And
I don't know what the situation is in your states, but in North Carolina, a lot of those decisions about clear cutting and development and overdevelopment are come under the jurisdiction of state law, not
Mhm.
local law.
Mhm.
And what's happened is the special interests, like the developers and the real estate industry and contractors and those folks, they've all gone to Raleigh and gotten the state legislature by giving them fat checks at election time, have gotten the state legislature to approve laws that in effect take the authority away from local county commissions and so on and give it to the state. And then the state passes laws that are favorable to the developers and the contractors and the real estate business. So you get to the point down here where you're driving down the road and you see yet another clear cut 30 or 40 acres getting ready to spout some kind of development. And you're saying, can't the county commission do something about this? Even if they
Yeah,
wanted
they've
to.
been paid off.
Yeah, they've probably been paid off
They've
too.
been paid off too.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah. So even if they wanted to, they probably couldn't do anything. Needs to be changed.
You know what? It seems to me, I saw something the other day where state senate race that I think the state senate salary is something around, I don't know, $30,000 a year. Not very much.
Mm.
About the same in Georgia too.
Yeah. But these
Mhm.
people are spending hundreds of thousands, if not millions, to win those seats. Why?
Because in the case,
Special interests.
yeah, in the case of the state legislator, if they can control those guys at the state level rather than the county level, then that North Carolina's got 100 counties, so they have to go through and do it 100 times as opposed to do it once.
Yeah.
So they did. That's what they decided to do, and it's worked very well for them.
Yeah. Arthur, you've got a new state law there that requires sheriffs to report illegal immigrants to ICE, right?
Yeah, yeah, it hadn't passed yet, but it's in conference. And it used to be that sheriffs didn't have any problem. They were pretty much uniform in reporting illegal immigrants to ICE. But then some of them started backing off. So the Republicans saw an issue and they've passed a law but they haven't given any consideration in the law to making sure that somebody who's about to get deported to ICE is given his day in court or any kind of equality under the law. They're just saying if the sheriff thinks that this particular guy is illegal, they're going to report him to ICE and deport him to wherever.
Mhm.
The ACLU and some other organizations are probably going to attack it if it gets passed, which it will, because the governor will veto it and it'll get overridden. So it'll become a law. We're not quite there yet, but we're getting there.
Yeah. Robert, Congress overwhelmingly rejected Marjorie Taylor Greene's latest effort to oust Speaker Mike Johnson. What do you think the implications are of that for Greene?
Oh, you mean the bleach blonde dad built butch body?
Yeah, her. Huh?
Yeah, that yet
Yeah.
another embarrassing day in American politics and Georgia politics. And the poor Republican white guy that was trying to control that, he should have just got up and walked out of the room. I don't know if you saw the video, but I forget where he was from or what his name was, but he was like, ladies, come on. I'm like, you're really trying to get in between these women?
You mean in the congressional?
Good luck.
That was that congressman from Alabama who headed up that impeachment hearing for Biden, or not Biden, but the guy who's the cabinet secretary,
Homeland Security Secretary.
Guy, yeah. And that's that same guy. But that isn't what this hearing was about. But boy, that was something. That was something. That little outbreak.
Yeah.
And the Democrats and the old guard will try to say when they go low, we go high. But
yeah,
good Lord, how do you sit there and listen to this BS and just, what do you just stare at the camera and ignore it and just look at them like they're a bunch of monkeys at a zoo? I don't know.
Hey, Robert,
and then,
go ahead, finish.
Yeah, and then it comes back to Georgia as well. It didn't make front page news, but then Marjorie decides to make some changes in her congressional office and fires Travis Loudermilk.
Yeah.
Any of you that have followed our episodes, Travis is let me get this right, he is the homeschooled, unvaccinated son of Barry Loudermilk. And those apples don't fall far from the tree. Barry Loudermilk and Marjorie's districts, they're right next to each other. Barry has gone on the record and said that he homeschools his children and did not vaccinate them.
Oh,
there you go. I guess maybe he's got a worm in his head too because he didn't get vaccinated. But hello,
how old is this guy? Travis.
I think he's 20s or 30s. I don't know. He's a young kid.
He's a young kid, yeah.
And there was one report
Why is it that she fired him? Something about infidelity making her look bad? What was that all about?
So the story that I read is that he basically abandoned his wife and found another woman.
Oh, okay.
And allegedly was not even giving her any money. These are the kind of people where the woman does not work. Remember the Harrison Buckner fiasco recently? Yeah. If you're a woman, you got to stay home and cook and clean, and you can't work. So then Travis just abandons her and goes with some other floozy.
Yeah. Okay.
But that was enough to get fired by Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. So what else you got cooking in Georgia there, Robert?
So this is breaking, and I'm going to preface this that I have not had a chance because it literally just landed in my inbox today, but we had the election Tuesday here in Georgia, and I do know that here in Georgia, ballots are being scrutinized, and I'll say that in air quotes. And this goes back to even before this House Bill 316 and other things that have happened, but basically, as I know it, if you vote a provisional ballot in Georgia, it's probably a 95% chance that ballot is not going to get counted. Everything that I understand about it, and there's two sides to this story. Let's say that you go in to vote. Maybe you go to the wrong polling place. Maybe they cannot locate your voting record. As I understand it, you were given a provisional ballot and allowed to vote, but that vote goes in a different box. And then the onus is on you to follow up with some unclear process in person to actually cure that ballot to make sure they're going to count it. I'm hearing today 1,620 votes was a margin that the Fulton County Court Clerk race, and there will be a runoff for that particular race, but the number 2 and 3 spots, there was 1,620 votes there. They're saying that there were a high number of ballots rejected, including those provisional ballots. I don't know where this is going to go, if anywhere, but Fulton County, and not to make this a partisan thing either way, you have what Trump has said about Fulton County. You've had other political leanings from the other side. It's an interesting way that they count votes here in Georgia. At least there's a paper trail, because back when Kemp ran his own election, we didn't have a paper trail. You put a card in a computer and you were just an entry in an Excel database somewhere, Excel spreadsheet. At least we have a paper trail to go back and go through that. But we'll see what happens to it.
Mm-hmm. Now, during the last episode that we did last month, you talked about somebody named Keisha Waits. What happened with Keisha?
She was that third person. We'll have to see where this goes. I was chatting with her earlier today, and busy day here. So we'll see where that goes, because there were 4 people in that race. You had Che Alexander that was probably riding the coattails of Fani Willis. You had another in there. So we'll see what happens with the outcome there.
So that race isn't over yet?
I cannot say that for certain. I don't know what. It's clearly breaking as we're recording this.
Okay. She was running for what?
So this is the Fulton County Court Clerk race.
Oh, that's right.
So if you rewind a number of months, this is the office that leaked the Trump indictment inadvertently.
Right. So that's an important position.
Oh yeah, and it's not just for criminal court cases. This is the office that stamps your deeds for your house. This is the office that serves civil papers and the marshal and all this. It's an important, and it's the busiest office in the whole state, Fulton County.
Wow.
I will say that something that I was a little more intriguing and rose my eyebrow is that in this particular race, there was a billboard that popped up quoting to re-elect Che Alexander. Che Alexander was appointed the first time. And then on this election, she was going for election. But so I scroll down and look at the bottom of the billboard. It's paid for by a PAC. And guess who the PAC is led by? Trump's bail bondsman.
Oh, no kidding. Oh, no kidding.
Now, it's very intriguing to me that Trump's bail bondsman has a PAC, number one. And number two, why does he want to support the court clerk that leaked the Trump indictment?
That's interesting.
Yeah, it is. Okay. All right, you guys, anything else cooking?
Plenty for this week.
I think so.
Okay. All right. Hey guys, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this Lean to the Left video and you found it interesting and informative. Please visit on a regular basis and check out our interviews with guests on topics that focus on progressive politics and the important social issues of our time. Now, our interview shows stream on Mondays with special episodes on Thursdays. And you can check out upcoming shows, guests, and topics at podcast.leantotheleft.net. Subscribe to our audio version there and to our video shows here at YouTube. And follow us on social media. Facebook at Bob Gatty and the Lean to the Left podcast. Now, it's 2. Bob Gatty is one Facebook page, and the Lean to the Left podcast is a second Facebook page. Twitter at Lean to the Left 1, Instagram at Lean to the Left 1, TikTok at Lean to the Left, LinkedIn at Bob Gatty, and YouTube at Lean to the Left. Now, I hope you'll support Lean to the Left as well so we can keep things going. Just click on the Donate tab at the top of the leantotheleft.net homepage and contribute by buying me a cup of coffee. That'll really help and would be much, much, much appreciated. Now, this is Bob Gatty signing off for Lean to the Left. Thanks for sharing your time with us.